And now I will share my screen. Yeah.
Lumen is seagull resistant to salt water, but I don't know about seagull mute. Lumen does dissolve in hydrochloric acid. I don't know, I don't think there's none of that usually in mute, it's usually more like.
Hey, how's it going?
I-
See ya.
So anyway, it's, I've been trying to sort it out and I don't, everything I see is just people are mostly saying put up the spikes on the roof and so they don't settle in.
They do that. Nice to see you.
Hey, hey.
Yeah.
Plenty of time.
Looks like when I'm in presentation mode, we won't see. We won't see.
Oh,
I mean, I can just take us out of presentation mode.
good. It's just that little side just burns the
I
only
don't know. I think it's blue.
and then you can.
That would be,
Not liking that. Inside show. There we go.
Last summer. First. And we got it straight over, like, oh, how many been here? And they said, no, we can't.
Some seconds.
41, we'll have 3 times that.
I think you have to see that fast.
60 or 60.
Yeah, because that was, I mean, I think you consider that one. I think it's the first.
So I was gonna say that this year, it's right.
Yeah, like it's, you know, you get.
Yeah.
It's fine. I mean, I had something else to go do, which kind of.
Sounds like you got plenty to do for that.
Well, now I'm good too. She keeps saying yes to shit. Stop it. My wife. I'm on the party thing, the boarding city, and I got the. Just stop it. Just stop it.
Yeah.
We have, I'm still having a little fun with it. So I'm still having fun.
So you got. You'll have to.
Well, there'll be a
Say
time.
no.
There'll be a time.
There's
Started busy enough to try to come.
Yeah, well, that's.
And
fine.
that made me.
This done, this done, this done, this done. I'll be good. I have to go out. That's it. Wise not to. So we.
A lot of the water.
No, not even, I'm sorry,
Not a whole lot of tickets coming in yet.
Sorry, I meant just wasn't that base.
Yeah,
I started trips a little bit, but yeah, visibility is not too great yet.
Yeah, we got time.
Oh, yeah.
Looking at, I came over the hill from Portland, it looked like the visibility is gonna, river getting muddier.
Oh, yeah.
And it's raining pretty hard up on top of the mountain up there, so.
Yeah.
You're gonna get some less visibility for a while,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
but that's typical this time of year.
Oh, yeah, it has to be expected.
Yeah,
It wasn't.
I was gonna go crafting this year, but with my dogs are super old, they require like a lot of attention. So I gotta sit that out, stay home and take care of them. So it's like waiting game till.
Work out.
is there anybody base crabbing,
Doesn't work out.
commercial bay crabbing
It was
until?
like an extension.
Used to be.
They all came up here at the end of the season,
Yeah.
November.
Yeah.
They flocked.
And they were getting really good, pulled some really good numbers
Were they?
too.
Yeah.
There used to be, I know,
I
there
guess
was
it would
quite
have
a
been
few
an
days,
extension,
but,
the paper.
and then for a long time, there weren't any.
They move around. I mean, it used to be the bulk of the landings would kick up Hudson Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also.
And then the last 4 to 5 years, they'll hit different bays, different years. And this year it started, down in Bandon.
Well, they must.
There's one in the Haley Bay that was,
In the Halem.
yeah, it's some really good numbers too, yeah.
Well, it's a damn good crab here. and I must have made some money.
Oh, I heard, yeah, I actually really not doing it myself.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought that would have been, and I don't know what the price of crab was, but it's probably pretty.
What's up, 6 fish?
Yeah.
6 or 7.
So.
And so I did a lot of sport crab in my house, was coming out of stuff, I'm like, man, look like it's cheap as this.
And this one.
Yeah.
It's like the second biggest base ranch here.
I haven't never gotten any
And
messages.
that means all of like
Did you get that?
60 or 70,000 pounds
organizations.
It's like one boat landing.
And I also provided my photo, so I know it's faulty either.
Yeah, nothing was ringing.
Maybe even if it's capital.
Really? That's all it is?
If they can't do anything.
Hopefully it wasn't hurt. Might be worth a check.
Take a while to get it.
Well, I still remember I used to use a figure,
By the-
well, years back when we were arguing, the commercial guys were arguing, they didn't want, the sport guys that got me.
Anyways, by those, yeah.
and I remember we used to use 13 million pounds versus a million pounds.
Towards.
Did they ever make a million pounds? Sports total,
I can't.
Yeah.
ocean and bay?
I believe so.
Yeah, that's the figure we
I'd have
use.
to, I'd have to.
Now, we go, wait a minute, it's 13, there's only a million. Come on now, we're not, I was gonna get into, we don't want to go down there.
Of course, my phone starts ringing. Stop it.
They don't fund it.
Steve, I squeezed you down a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, good.
Go and make it.
Just so I could have Brett looking at the room,
Yeah.
not just at me.
Get funding.
Brett, do you still feel like you can hear the other voices in the room a little bit?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, that's awesome. Awesome to hear.
You can sit wherever you want, or send it up so that.
Oh,
Yeah, the bars, and we already have a. Hey,
Hey, Griffey.
the foods that he is.
My meeting got done earlier than
So my guess is the city's.
Craig Mason.
Yeah, so
Oh, he's done the crowd, which is around, so.
Really?
Up onto the dock, and then we embrace the old. So
Yeah.
he wasn't even being expensive.
Yeah, I was unsure, so I think that's it. Yeah.
We didn't hear.
No, he did fill out the scheduling pool, but out of the, I think, 2+ weeks I provided, he had 1 hour on 2 days that he was available. This was one of the hours though, so I was hopeful he would maybe come, he could come partway through if he was busy.
Their goal with each one. Plywood with 2 people. That doesn't make a big dent in 100 cases, but that's what we did. At one point, we had barge from Port Garibaldi loaded, we started getting rid of trash that goes to us, and we loaded a bunch of stuff onto it. And as we were taking it back, it started sinking. Oh, yeah, that barge was not much of a barge, it was really just a floating dock.
little early, so yeah.
Hooked on some other stuff to it, it pushed it all the way back for us, to the.
Yeah, not even thought about it this year.
Where it exited, and we did the poundage on it, and it wasn't even 4,000 pounds. And that, the barge should have been, and then we actually were gonna put the plywood on it, haul it back out, and, so that's when, North County came through and sent their honor students and another group of students out.
Oh, Summer, by the way, thank you for the reminder today.
Oh, yeah,
Since we continue to do it.
okay.
But that's,
Oh, man, you can't.
not that I forget stuff, but it's easy.
We're all busy. We're all busy, yeah. I just wanted to make sure. There's also some confusion with a cancellation coming out, so I just wanted to stay at 15 times.
I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
I got you.
Got the right thing.
Yeah.
Take wheels with us, and have a, two back. Sliding platform.
Yeah.
Together. And you balance the plywood on it, somebody can pull, somebody can push. And I picked them up within a day, I ordered them, got it back within a day. And of course, it's that, the one day after we'd actually pushed them out, so that was like.
My grandson got all excited, like,
And
printed them on the dock, it was down.
But then.
And, he was set. And he saw these pictures and goggles and goes, when are we gonna go do that? I said, well, you little places, let's do it.
I know.
Want me to do that?
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Hey, so thanks for coming. And again, I'm really happy that we have a chance to meet each other face to face.
Yeah.
You know, we were looking as we drove up, Mitch and Summer and I will introduce Summer in just a sec. But we've been at this now 2.5 years. And the original intent was to get together and meet up here in person. Right.
I don't know what that says about us.
Well, there's that. But anyway, I'm very happy to have this opportunity to meet y'all face to face and We've had, really good participation by TBCAC members and have not had any turnover there. And the only staff turnover has been on our side. And so Liz Parati, who we used to dealing with, has moved on to another position, nice position for her. And we're very fortunate to have Summer Hendrickson now stepping in.
Wow, round of applause. I'm so generous.
Introduce yourself and
Yeah.
what you've done.
So yeah, I'm Summer Hendrickson. As he said, I'm in the role that was previously held by Liz Parati. And prior to that, I actually worked as a crew lead with Seeker doing the intertidal surveys in Tillamook Bay. So I'm familiar with the area and the goals of this committee and whatnot.
Every mud flat.
Every mud flat, I know why. Yeah, so I spent a lot of time in Tillamook Bay and I'm excited to be here.
Good, good. So with that, everybody who was expected to be here in person is here, with the exception of Craig Andes. And Craig let us know he might be here or might not. He actually identified this time slot and date as working for him. But anyway, so he might show up.
But only 1 hour of it, and I can't remember if it was the first or second, so we might get him later on.
So again,
I'm
with
not
that.
here.
Yeah.
I need a different meeting.
Thanks for
who's
ditching-
online?
Yeah, and then so we have Brett Simp online. He will be attending virtually, and I'll hopefully incorporate him a lot into this meeting. He says he can hear all of you. Do you want to say hi and see if they can all hear you, Brett?
Hello, group.
Got him? Awesome. And yes, you can see him up there on the screen as well. Did you want to record? Yeah, we're recording. Perfect.
All right, with that, so then I want to pass to Chrissy. Chrissy, you want to call us to order?
Sure,
Okay.
I'll call you guys to order. Let's see, what time is it?
Mhm.
It is 1:04, so we are starting really close to on time. Thank you, everybody. And we have the agenda kind of getting up to speed on where everybody, or where the group is, and getting to hear a little bit of the results. And we just wanted to see before we get started, if anybody had any changes that they wanted to make to the agenda, or what it looks like so far. And if not, then we will go ahead and I guess you've had a chance to introduce yourself to everybody.
Yep.
So everybody knows Summer now. So I guess we can go ahead and hear a little bit about the interim summary and what you guys all.
Can I ask to just step back?
Oh, sure. Oh, I'm sorry.
Clock.
With a, yep.
We want to just make sure
timeline.
everybody's completely on board about the time frame
Sorry, yes.
available to us.
Mhm.
So Mitch, you gonna walk us through that?
Okay.
Yes.
You can get that.
Might help get pointer here if this guy works.
Go ahead. I always miss something on.
Yeah, so I just wanted to spell out where we're at and where we need to go. We are here physically. We just finished. You guys got the interim report to us, just a few months ago. And we boiled that down and Steve just delivered that to the legislature back in December. And no big replies from them, correct, Steve? So they just accepted that and we're gonna keep keeping on. So here we are in meeting 11, like I said, 2.5 years after the inception. And we have just until basically September, October to get that final report done. Between now and then, we talked about doing about quarterly meetings. This is all, well, these are subject to change whenever you guys think. But we did slate, a 12th, 13th, and 14th meeting on this timeline. In the meantime, Seeker is gearing up to come on back up here to Tillamook and finish all of the intertidal stock assessment work. Most of that, well, their crew is gonna shrink after the end of June.
Yeah.
So they're gonna be hitting that hard and heavy in the spring. Then I believe that we are working on a contract to do the subtitle assessment work also, and that also needs to be done by the end of June, correct?
Yes, that's that first like blue bullet. there.
Okay, that's subtitle. Will be done by the end of June. And Seeker is gonna be going hard for a while, but then probably mopping up through the summer to really finish every single bit of that. And summer's gonna touch on some of the nuances there also. But then anyway, we have until late in the year to finalize all these recommendations and put that into report form, get that to us. And then Steve will do his magic once again and get that to the legislature. And then with that final set of recommendations, we'll move forward and see what comes of all this work.
Okay, I have a question. If I-
Yeah,
Just because they complete the surveys doesn't mean they've analyzed it.
that's true.
And so we'll still be making recommendations without the analysis that we've been asking for 2.5 years.
Some of those numbers are going to become available through time. Indeed, we are just now working through the beginning of the analysis of the numbers from last summer and spring. And we're gonna be doing a lot more work with those numbers to probably come up with another intertidal cockle quota for this year. But yeah, that does take quite a bit of effort to crunch all those numbers because they are so many.
We
So
are gonna
yeah,
share-
it's gonna continue to work, yeah.
Summer's gonna share a preliminary look at those numbers though today.
I know.
Yeah, so we're gonna take a look at
But
some of
you know,
that.
the reason this whole thing started was the intertidal.
Yeah.
And that's the last thing that's being completed. And there's no way you can analyze the numbers by the time the final report is due, according to that timeline.
Right, but the report will still be the report and those recommendations will be finalized and then we're gonna continue managing the fishery with whatever data we get, you know, in perpetuity. But that's where we're at now.
The seeker team has prioritized the primary areas where conflict has occurred over here in the past, so we should have those numbers in, to be able to talk about them in this way. And by that meeting,
Timeline.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be working with numbers by then, but it might not be whole bay.
And which one were you pointing at, April? Or were you working with
Oh,
numbers?
well, I was kind of moving it around on purpose.
I think April.
Yeah,
Yeah,
April. We
I think
should
that's
be able to be
realistic.
Discussing. You know,
The
biomass
conflict
estimates.
areas
Yeah,
with
Yeah.
the data by April.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
yep.
those are good questions.
So yeah, that's the end goal we're shooting for. Also, in the middle there, I'm gonna let Christie, you know, address this, but there was some mention of potentially forming some subcommittees. So subgroups of people can really dive into certain topics and maybe really expand some of the ideas and things needed for each of them. But I'll let Christie talk about that. And so that's the timeline that is possible. None of this is set in stone really, except like these subtitle surveys
And the yellow parts.
and the yellow parts, yeah.
Yeah.
So we've
Yeah,
got-
and end of December or in December, we have to get that report to the legislature.
So we've got 10 to 12 months to wrap up the recommendations. And I think we've done a great job on the interim report that you put together there
Mhm.
and the brainstorming session to identify these new issues. So looking pretty good. We're in pretty good shape.
Did you get any feedback on the interim report?
Well, before you came in, we were joking around about it. I wrote the initial one and it was about 15 pages and I got feedback saying, make it half that.
And that's from the ODFW.
That's from the ODFW.
Got it.
And then I got told, make it even a little shorter too. So we ended up with a very brief, that's the one I sent out to you, a very brief kind of just oversight of what's going on.
With ours being an attachment,
Yeah, and
right?
your full report is an attachment to that. So in essence, it's kind of just a cover page over it. And I repeated the recommendation, which is really the guts of this verbatim. But, yeah,
But to date, I don't think we've heard anything back from any legislative
not about the content.
members or even our upper management on action. The commission hasn't called you, right, Steve?
Right, right, not so far.
Yet.
I do have a concern with Barbara's comment and that is that set in stone, those two yellow things? That, in other words, if we come up and say we have we really actually still need this piece of data and won't be here for another 3 months. Is it possible to make?
Well,
that
it
go further?
probably,
It's
it probably is possible. Now recall how we ended up with those. So by law, we were actually to be
Yeah.
done
Yeah.
in December of last year.
Yeah.
And then when we were encountering difficulties in getting all of that done,
But by law, it also said that the C4 report would be done
Yes,
by, you know,
yes.
2 years ago,
Yeah.
so.
But there is, so we aren't against a rock and we have a deadline. We have to work as hard as we can to get it. But if something pops up, then we go,
Yes.
we need data before we can
Well,
answer.
correct me if my recollection is incorrect, but when we encountered that situation last year, the committee asked Barbara, with your connections, Barb, to make contact with Senator Johnson at that time. And Senator Johnson contacted my boss, Kurt Melcher, and they struck a deal, and this is our deal.
Okay,
Right.
so this is a chance for a second,
Yeah.
if it's necessary. Hopefully.
Don't care anymore.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I think a lot of that was COVID driven and the delays caused by COVID with the
So
state.
we do have another person from here who was in the legislature,
Right,
Suzanne Weber.
Yes.
but she was not in the legislature in any capacity when this bill, but
No, I agree, but I would assume
so it's
she,
like, you know,
she probably has
Marty
some
Roman
interest.
was there and involved, and Tiffany Mitchell and Brad Witt and Sherry Springer. None of those people are still in the legislature.
Mhm.
So the fact that this hit and wasn't all like, is because none of them know what the need was or what our concerns were, and
I was just thinking that Suzanne would probably have an interest, being she's from here. And if I could tell them by him, right in her backyard, so we could probably use some of that to help us if we need to. I don't know, you know better than.
she was my mom's neighbor.
Well, then we got a better.
Pretty good to know. That's really good to know.
Just get over there and have a cup of coffee.
I'm having a big pie.
Yeah.
So Claire, that's a great question. And again, those two yellow boxes just reflect the deal making before.
Yeah,
But that's as hard and fast as we know at this point.
I think that if we're hopeful that the data might be available in April and we can assess around that time or the July meeting on how close or how good we think we can do.
Mhm.
And if not, then that's the time when we go start talking to maybe Suzanne and some other folks and say, get them caught up to speed.
I would say that April,
Yeah.
because at the end of June, they go in, they recess.
Maybe
By
some-
July 4th, that
Okay.
their session is over. So if we want something, we want to push it out,
Yeah, then we go around that time.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, so then the upper box that's on that timeline is that in between those, quarterly meetings, we may choose to meet more often, with smaller groups, so we can talk about that later on in the agenda. That's what that's all about, depending on what we think we need to do in order to address all of the issues that we have on our list.
Can you roll back to the agenda?
yes, I can.
So just you can point out where that'll show up.
So I think that's a pretty good picture of the timeline.
Mhm.
And thank you for putting that together.
Not a problem.
All right, so now are we ready?
Yes.
For the one that I was gonna say next. You could maybe, was there anything more to tell us about the legislative report?
Well, so I just wanted to report again. So you all put together your nice interim report recommendations.
Thank you.
Pass that to us. Yeah, did a great job there. So we took that report and drafted our legislative report. And as I mentioned, it's smaller than we did. Sent that all out to you guys last week. So you've seen that, but I just wanted to capture just the very last points just to emphasize again, where does the committee need to go? So the very last part of that legislative report are next steps. So the Tillamook Bay Clam Advisory Committee is going to continue to meet during 2023 to discuss new topics, to refine any earlier recommendations, and also to present your final report to ODFW by the end of 2023, as Mitch just showed us. Second bullet, ODFW is going to continue to post information about our meetings, including the schedule, agenda, presentation materials, and recordings on our website. And just to remind everybody that if you ever want to go back and look at any of our proceedings from earlier meetings, that's all available on the site. Summer is recording this meeting. You can go back and use it. I think that's a big valuable resource to us. We do what we can to maintain that. Third bullet, ODFW and our seeker team stock assessment surveys are going to continue in 2023 to generate new estimates of biomass of bay clams. And as I just mentioned before, we've done a bunch of work, and Summer was directly part of that during 2022 at the big priority areas. So we're going to share some of that information here today. And as Mitch pointed out, we are now entered into the contract for the subtitle surveys, and that's going to start up soon up here. So we should have the subtitle biomass. So intertidal is almost done. The
Now-
subtitle is just getting.
Now, the contract, I want to ask about
Yeah.
that. One of our recommendations was that you use local. Were you able to do that, incorporate local diving?
We let out a request for proposals, and we got one bid, and it's local in Oregon, but not local in Tillamook Bay.
Okay, but that was by their choice. They had the option.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Efforts are currently underway to generate the preliminary stock assessments for bay clams within the sub-regions of Tillamook Bay, where seeker surveys are completed in the intertidal zone, and we're going to share the preliminary results of that here today. And then the fourth bullet, surveys of bay clam populations in the subtidal zones currently scheduled for spring, early summer of 2023. Data sets generated by those subtidal surveys will be used to update and revise stock estimates for the commercial bay clam dive fishery. So that'll come later. Okay. So in essence, that's just the recap of what's in the legislative report. We also talked about holding the meetings, information committee, just all of that type of material.
So, do you typically get feedback from interim reports?
Well, sometimes it depends on the session, if it's a long session or a short session. We're in a short legislative session right now. So our delivery,
We're in the long one.
sorry, yeah, but we're right at this minute, we're getting lots and lots of bills introduced. So I don't think we're getting a lot of attention. And also, as Barb's pointed out, many of the players who were the elected officials who were part of the Coastal Caucus at that time have changed. Yeah.
You can't ever tell. I mean, I saw committees when eventually they get down, they want everything to do, and all of a sudden, something that was sitting there, maybe hadn't gotten any attention, all of a sudden it gets grabbed and there's some, so you can't ever tell. And over the years, we had them go both ways. Stuff you thought they were gonna run with, didn't, and other stuff they did. So you gotta be on your toes. You
Yeah.
guys will have to be ready, obviously, because it could happen.
It could happen anytime.
Yeah.
I've been told, keep a jacket and a necktie in my office.
Okay, great. Well, I think we'll spend most of the time today giving you as much time as you need for the presentation and then lots of time for questions.
Yeah, I think we've allocated 30 minutes for this element and then a good amount of it to go through kind of the other topics and issues for discussion. So I will move on to that slide. All right, so this slide really is a recap. I'm just going to go briefly through the progress that Seeker made in 2022 on the Tillamook Bay Intertidal Survey, and then we'll proceed into the preliminary results. This is a slide you've already seen. It was presented by Tony D'Andrea in June. But really, I want to show what has already been done. So as Tony previously mentioned, logistical constraints meant we couldn't survey the whole bay in 2022. So we really focused on the northern tide flats for a couple reasons. The first being that that's where the majority of the gaper and cockle populations were in previous surveys. And then also it's where most of the sport and commercial effort is. So to orient you to this, we have our three flats. So we have Garibaldi Flat, which is the northernmost flat with lots of recreational effort and no commercial use. We have Middle Flat here in the middle. I think people call it Center Flat too, or a couple other names. But it's where there's a lot of commercial raking activity and there's also some sport use as well. The other flat shown here is what we're calling Bay Ocean North, which extends from where the floating toilets are in Crab Harbor up here down to the start of aquaculture plats. So for this figure, the overlay over the different flats is tide bins. So blue here is those areas that are exposed only at good low tides. Yellow here is exposed at mid tides, and then red is only exposed at higher tides. You also see 2 points. The white points are what we call RAM points, or rapid assessment method points, where only habitat data is gathered. The yellow points, we take both habitat data as well as actually take clams. And that's what's used for stock estimates. And that's the detailed assessment method. So this is just a refresher before we dive into preliminary results.
The red that I see there, as I look at it, it means that's the stuff that's comes out of the water routinely on the highest percentage of the tides that we would see.
Exactly. So most accessible. Yeah, the higher spots. And
Okay.
we use this because we use a stratified method that uses tide bins for sampling. So that's the purpose of showing that here. Before moving on to preliminary results, I just want to touch on one thing. So this area circled here, it was kind of interesting. When the seeker team went and surveyed here, we saw significant erosion, so loss of sediment on the eastern edge there, so right by that deep channel that runs right here. And then we saw significant accretion, so gain of new sediment on this western edge. And really what it resulted in was a shift of that whole spit. So the reason I'm saying that is because seekers currently and in the process of doing bathymetry work there to get a better idea of where that spit is now. And they will resurvey that area in 2023. So that part of Bay Ocean North, there's still some data to come out of there.
Summer, what does each one of the circles represent? I know they represent clans, but like how many, what is that data?
Yeah, good question. So this actually isn't representing clam densities or anything like this. This is the survey setup. So these white points are areas that we use our rapid assessment method or use. They've already been sampled with our rapid assessment method and only collect habitat data. The yellow circles are areas that we actually both do the RAM method as well as the detailed assessment method with the megacore suction dredge and get clams from that. And so the white or the yellow dots, excuse me, are the areas that are then used for stock estimates and that kind of analyses. This isn't showing results of that. This is just showing the setup. So the sampling design. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks. Good question, Brett. So again, this, as Summers just pointed out, these are just the locations where the team went.
Yeah.
But no results in there and what they did once they're there.
But the results, you've probably seen these maps before, they're on the website and so forth. So these are the results from those dots from 2012.
Yeah, except this is from the 2022 survey. So the results from these are not yet available. But I'll share preliminaries.
Before you leave this, can you also point out what we're calling the fog flats, just so everybody will see what that area too?
Yeah, so this roughly right here, it would extend beyond where this photo is, but this is what we call fog flat. And this is an area that will be sampled in 2023, but has not yet been sampled.
So where is the ghost hole?
The ghost hole is off over here.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see the channel going way off.
It's one, should be
One more.
One more.
Oh, it is one. Yeah, good call. Yeah, so this is actually what we call torch flat, and then the ghost hole would be somewhere over here. So well off of the map.
So is the fog flat, is that heavily used, commercially?
I'm
Yes.
gonna say not heavily.
I think there is some braking activity since it's in pretty close proximity. I think there is some commercial use, but a lot of that flat is very muddy and really hard to traverse. So a lot of that flat I don't think is used recreationally or commercially.
I will say our crew hits that flat heavy throughout. It definitely has a lot of clams on it.
Okay, that's awesome insider knowledge. All right, any more questions from the group? All right, awesome. We will move on to some preliminary results then. Oh, we can't quite see the title there, but that should be okay. Okay, so this will be a slide sharing preliminary 2022 Seeker Tillamook Bay intertidal bay clam survey results. I just said it, but I'm going to emphasize it one more time. These results are preliminary. They're subject to change with additional sampling, like that sampling on that Bay Ocean North spit that I talked about, as well as on Fog Flat and the additional flats we plan on sampling, and also more refined data analyses. There's a lot of data that comes from a survey like this, and it takes a long time to comb through and get meaningful, usable numbers out of it. So now I'm going to orient you a little bit to the figure. So we have the 3 flats I just talked about, Garibaldi, Bay Ocean North, and Middle Flat along the top there. And then on the left-hand side, we have the 4 clams of the most recreational and commercial importance. So butter clams, cockle clams, gaper clams, and native little neck clams. So the arrows are color-coded to indicate relative increases in biomass, so increases, positive % change in green, negative % change, so decreases in biomass in red, and then the great equal sign is no discernible change there. One thing I really want to emphasize here, and it really changes the interpretation of this, is that the size of the arrow here indicates the relative magnitude of the % change. It's not indicating biomass. So a huge arrow here means a big change when compared to the 2010 to 2012 survey results. So the previous Seeker survey, it doesn't necessarily mean a big biomass, if that makes sense.
Right, so personally, I got involved when I was on the Bay Ocean North, and I noticed one weekend I went out for gapers and they were everywhere. And then 2 weeks later, the next cycle, they were all gone. And so, you know, my on the sandbar experience correlates with what you have there, the gapers. I mean, they were just an opportunity that opened it up for commercial, and they went through and really did a good job on harvesting. And it just freaked me out. So that's why when someone said, hey, we're gonna do this, I said, well, you know, I'll help.
Yeah.
I'm working Salem. What can I do? So
and one comment on that is that spit that I described that has shifted, there's significant gaper population there. I know from just being out there and observing it. So that's why I said these are subject to change. Might not change the direction. Yeah, and they are longer lived clams and sporadic recruitment too. So, you know, that also impacts that.
So Summer, so on Bay Ocean, because are you guys trying to do the same transects that you were doing in 2012? And is that why you didn't necessarily sample on the accretion side?
So it's not that we do transects. So the way that the survey is set up is we use bathymetry to identify the tide bends, so low, medium, and high, and then we sample within those tide bends. So it requires that we know the tidal elevation of the area that we're sampling in advance of us actually sampling there. So we actually, we held off when we got there because we weren't going to be able to do that same random stratified sampling method since we didn't have accurate bathymetry. So that's really the purpose there, is that shift meant we weren't able to kind of employ our sampling design like we wanted to. So we will revisit. I've already done bathymetry there. So they're in the process of analyzing that, and then they'll revisit that. But that's really the reason why. It isn't that we don't return to the exact same spots. We use the same methods, but it's not that we're digging in the same actual point, if that makes sense.
Yep.
We select random points within each one of those tide strata areas.
Yeah, with the number corresponding to the area of that tide bend.
So
that makes sense.
I have another question. How does this compare to 2000, the time we did it before? I mean, the last survey, the first survey.
That's an awesome question, and that has to be done. So I don't have an answer to that at the time being.
Because I, you know, even the numbers had gone down from 2000 to 2010.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing even a bigger decrease in 2020.
And one thing I'll say is that there's spatial variability. So we're seeing some decreases, but we're seeing increases in other parts of the bay. Specifically, I think we're talking about gapers. So obviously this could change in response to that additional sampling we're doing on Bay Ocean North. But we did see, you know, a moderate % decrease on Bay Ocean North but a moderate percent increase on Garibaldi and a slight percent increase on Middle Flat. So I think what we're getting at is that they're occurring in different places. And there's a lot of spatial variability in our data. One thing I want to emphasize before we dive too deep into questions and comments, which we'll leave time for sure, is that this figure here is representing the mean biomass. It's not representing the confidence intervals or the variability around those estimates. And that's just an important thing to note. And I want to make sure that I say that and that it's heard.
One question, Summer,
Yeah.
remind me again, the months that this sampling took place?
So it started in early spring, I think April we went through September. So we hit the whole tide window.
So for me, thinking about it in terms of, from an intertidal perspective, Brent, tell me if I'm right, much of this sampling took place after we had some commercial sampling already occurred, correct?
Right, but it always does at the same time. We talked about that too. The commercial guy said, hey, let's do it in January.
Well, I understand. I just wanted to put it in context. I'm seeing green arrows and red arrows. I just want to put it in context of whether it was before or after sampling, so we
Right,
knew when it was.
but it's the same time frame that sampled 10 years ago and 20 years ago.
Understood.
Okay.
And to your point, there's overlap with when commercial raking was occurring. I'm thinking specifically on Middle Flat. That's where a lot of that overlap was.
Sure.
But also a lot of our sample was after there was a lot of raking activity. So it kind of spans that whole time frame.
The one thing, Barbara, I don't know that it was occurring, I don't remember this number off the top of my head. In 10 and 12, I don't think we had the same level of intertidal harvest going on. I don't remember,
Well,
but
the
yeah, that's all I wanted.
Right.
That's the only reason to ask that.
right, well, the product is worth half as much. So there's been a
Yeah,
lot more
I was
effort.
just trying to put it in context.
Right.
Thank you.
So yeah, a couple things I want to point out. So I already touched on the spatial variability. So gapers are a good example of that. Like Barbara brought up, we've got some moderate percent decreases, some moderate percent increases on other flats, and some slight percent increases on other flats. So they're responding differently on the different flats. We also have variation by species. So if we look at Garibaldi flat, we have moderate percent increase for butters as well as gapers, no real discernible change for cockles on Garibaldi. And then for native little necks, we have a moderate percent decrease. Just a quick note on that, there's been a coast-wide decline of native little neck clams that's been observed in Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, well documented. So it's unlikely that that's a result of harvest. More likely that that's kind of just a continuation of that trend.
Like acidification or the warming of the ocean, what do you think it might be?
I could speculate. I'm really not sure, but I would assume that probably climate driven factors. That would be my reaction.
Mitch and I were recalling well over 15 years ago, we got together, Alaska, British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, all got together and talked about the regional decline in native little neck clams. We took action back in, I think, 2015 to prohibit commercial take of native little neck clams here in Oregon. But the recreational take has continued on, and it's, as Summers pointed out, that decline is across the geographic rim. So it is likely something big like that.
Yeah.
But we were seeing those declines even before the recent marine heat wave and things like that.
Going back.
Right.
And I've not seen any real impacts of acidification on any clam, shell making bivalve yet.
Well, Whiskey Creek's had a lot of problems with trying to grow their oysters because of it.
But that's in super unique conditions. That's when they had 10,000 larvae per milliliter or whatever. Not a natural system.
Mitch or Steve, with the increase in the cockles, do you think that that's possible? 5-6 years ago, we went to a size limit and you are seeing an increase in volume.
I can touch on that. So my immediate reaction is likely not. I've actually done a size frequency distribution. So looking at the size of cockles, and there's still a lot that are within that harvestable range, accounting for a lot of the biomass. So I think it's probably more likely due to kind of increases on that flat than it is just more of the small clams out there because of that limit that was put in place. That's my reaction to that. Do you guys have different thoughts?
Yeah, thanks. Good question, Brett. I just want to mention, so when Summer generated these numbers, we got a chance to see them for our first time last week, huh?
Yeah.
And I was struck that this is good news. You know, if you look over at Middle Flat, we've got some minor increases there in native little necks and minor increases in gapers, but substantial increases in cockles and butters. That's good news for this bay. And we've got, you know, some decreases on Bay Ocean North there to address, but again, native little necks going up at that site. And so as Summers pointed out, we've got variability in space in the bay, the different species adapting in different ways. And it's not one size fits all. But we're happy that the bay itself didn't decrease overall. And it would have been, I think, too much to expect the whole bay to increase all overall.
Yeah.
So it's a more complicated story, and just digging into it.
And then another interesting point, Barbara, I wanted to touch back on your question about the 2000 data.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm interested in going back to look at that more carefully and see what comparisons we can make. But I think when we started looking at that from 2000 to 2010, 12, the methods for those collections were so different. It's really difficult to make
Apples and
it
oranges.
hard. Yeah.
Cockles
But-
and gapers.
But that's why, you know, when Tony's group goes out there, man, they do it just the same way.
Yeah.
Get this awesome random site selection stuff and that is what makes the numbers as robust as we can make them.
Yeah.
That being said, the variability from yellow dot to yellow dot is so huge that there are large error bars around these estimates.
Now, what we were planning to do, so Summer's doing the preliminary share and preliminary analysis to get us just these big pictures right now. Tony will come and address us and walk us through the numbers in detail. He's away on vacation right now and will be back soon, but I'd like to set that up for our meeting in April. To get back in.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty excited. I think this is,
Yeah, I was
shows up that it is working pretty well. And
Yeah.
the ocean north is maybe where we have to focus maybe more of our energy or whatever, but
Yeah.
that's without the data you're pulling in.
Exactly. So that is subject to change to some
We may
extent.
not know until after in next fall
Yeah.
what the issue is there. But this is really good. I feel really.
It's good.
This
Yeah.
really makes me happy today.
Awesome. Yeah, so we are continuing to analyze the data and interpret results. It's a large data set, so it's going to take a while for us to comb through it and get meaningful biomass estimates for management purposes. But I really do want to emphasize, and I put it up here in red, that when we're looking at this, the size of the error is really indicating the relative magnitude of the percent change, not biomass. So when we're looking at this, big arrow doesn't mean big biomass, small arrow doesn't mean small biomass. It means a change relative to that 2010 to 2012 survey.
And then getting to the point that Brett made there, so the analysis takes some time because we're looking back through it, not only just for the pounds of clam meat out there, but what fraction of the population, how much of it is harvestable
Yep.
versus too small. So it's quite a bit of analysis goes into each one.
Definitely.
And so biomass versus numbers. So when you say cockles are the same for Garibaldi and Bay Ocean North, that means the same amount of clams, not necessarily the size of them, correct?
Yeah, so it means that the percent change was below our threshold for discernible. So there wasn't a large percent change compared to the
Of
previous
numbers.
numbers, so of biomass, not of size frequency distribution. So that analysis is important and is forthcoming.
But to clarify, it is numbers.
It is numbers.
Numbers, yeah.
It's based on the biomass. So it's the percent change in the biomass,
Yeah, it's not.
current
numbers
versus
planned.
previous.
Okay.
We're talking about weight.
We're looking at weight, it is biomass. Yeah, if that's what you're
That's
getting.
what I want to understand. It's
Yeah,
each of those yellow dots came up with a
Wait.
weight,
Yeah,
yeah,
and that weight is the difference here.
yes.
yeah, so that, yeah, yes, exactly. Any other questions, thoughts, discussion points?
Summer mentioned thresholds. We used internally just a threshold of 10% for this initial assessment of change. So if there was less than 10% change from 2010, 2012 to 2022, then we called it equal. But if it was greater than a 10% change, then we attributed it either plus or minus.
And a lot of that goes back to the variability around that estimate, which isn't shown here.
So
But
the
that's an important
little
part.
arrow would be a 10% change.
Little arrow would be more than a 10% change.
Okay, so what is the medium arrow?
Medium arrow is between like a 30 or a 10% change and like a 50% change.
And what is the large one?
That's between 50 and say 150% change.
That's a big, that's a
Wow.
change.
Yeah, so those are
It
big
is a
changes.
Again, though, when you see the error bars around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
estimates,
Yeah.
Sure,
that the
sure.
certainty of what that number will be.
Don't bring up.
Which is a really important part of the picture is that this is this isn't looking at the lower 95 or upper 95% confidence intervals.
So the little one was 10 to 30, the medium one's 30 to 50, and the large one's 50 to 150.
Roughly. Yeah, I'd have to look at it, but that's a rough look at that. And we'll be able to provide more specific numbers
Well,
in the
you're
future in
fabulous.
meetings.
I'm so glad that you have this position because, you know, that on the ground knowledge of
Yeah.
science, I just love it.
So maybe this isn't fair, but to look ahead at what will occur, we have more to come on this stuff, but when you move to the subtitle sample,
Yeah,
it will approach the subtitle sampling in the same way as was done on the intertitle, correct? I mean, in terms of the dots and the same kind of, we can generate the same kinds of arrows and everything the same on subtitle versus intertitle, correct?
yeah, we can use a comparable method for sure for the subtitle results.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, it's
And it'll
very.
be the same exact methodology as 10 years ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Understood.
they will be comparable that way. And how many potential dive days was that contract? Did you say 12 or 16?
No, it's
Something,
maybe
but
20
a
days.
significant number of days.
And what is that a day? 10,000?
No, not that high, but 5,000 probably this.
Yeah.
That's what it was 10 years ago, 5,000. So
So when you continue to do the analysis, because this is an entire flat, are you going to be looking at different regions on the area to give different
Go back to.
biomass levels?
Great question. Yes and no. For some areas, we definitely will do so. So what I'm specifically thinking about is Garibaldi Flat. So there's kind of a large difference in the substrate or the type of flat it is on if you're on this portion of it. So what we always called the Coast Guard part of the flat versus the rock pile part of the flat. So I do plan to tease that out a little bit more. But a lot of it will be whole flat estimates. And part of that is because you need the higher number of samples in order to get confidence around your estimate. So we can't splice it up too much or else we'll really impact that element of it.
Well, one of the reasons why I was asking is because part of the discussion has been trying to determine whether or not we want to designate some special management areas for
Yeah.
recreational only. And a lot of that discussion has been around middle flat. And if that was to be a recommendation, how would we divide up middle flat?
Yeah.
But we can't do that if we only have a full one number for the entire thing. Because if we said, okay, let's just say we split it down the middle, well, if one side has really great
Yeah,
biomass and the other side is really terrible, that's not a great way of splitting it up.
that's a really good point. And I think my response to that is if we had ideas of what possible management areas it could be, we could tease that out a little more. Once
I
again,
would think that what my discussion or what I was recalling was that the Bay Ocean North was the one, not the middle flat.
Yeah, I mean, that was just an example.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And again, we probably will update these maps. I've got a bunch of these if anyone wants one. But this does show the density of gapers at that one sample area. So we will have
Yeah.
some types of information like that to visually think about these options.
yeah,
We got yelled at pretty good when we made those maps. Some clammers weren't real thrilled.
Because they went to that dot and they went to that.
that specific dot.
Yeah,
Wait a minute, you told them.
well, we dug them all up right in that dot, so they're gone.
This discussion is a perfect example of our need for input from the committee. So if you were to come up with, say, for example, a sub area of Bay Ocean North, or a sub area of Middle Flat or the whole flat or whatever, that you wanted us to consider, you wanted to consider it as a special management area, then we can go to work, or someone can go to work, figure out just what's the biomass in that particular site.
Yep.
Or at the particular tide height in that site too.
So for one observation up there on Quality Flat, you've got the habitat only dots and the habitat and clam dots. Across the other areas, it seems pretty evenly kind of spread out, lots of yellow dots kind of all over.
Yeah.
Up on the Garibaldi Flat, they seem to be pushed to the, I guess that'd be the west. There are a few more yellow dots. Is that because of the tide bins?
It's for a couple reasons. Actually, I think most of the reason for that is that Tony added more random sites in that specific area because of the significant recreational use, so that we could get better estimates and less variability in our estimates in that area.
So it was a bit of a
Subjected to.
subjective decision, just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, which is why we kind of want to tease it out, the separate parts of
Possible.
that flat.
Now, Shane and
Look
Brett,
at all the people are on that thing at times. I did amazing me there's a clam.
Yeah, me too.
There'll be clams the next day that they're just falling out the same
I
number.
mean,
Yeah.
there's people over going, geez, there can't be that many clams left, but they
Yeah.
keep.
Well, that's what I thought when I first, when I got on this committee, because I was really concerned about it and started the citizen science program out there counting clams of people coming in and in subsequent days and realizing, oh my goodness, you think you got them all one day and
Yeah.
the next day there's still
Yeah.
clams out there. I mean, they come in, the cockles, and like,
Yeah.
they come in.
I was gonna point out, Shane and Brett, likewise, if you wanted to ask questions of us about what the prospective biomass of clams were in various areas here too, we should be able to generate some numbers there. If you gave us a certain circle,
Okay.
and we could
Yeah.
come up with a guess, forecast of what the biomass is, of
Right.
harvestable sized clams in those sites.
Okay, cool, yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah.
Steve and Mitch, while you're here right now, we talked about that Bay Ocean North, maybe just recreational something. Beginning a new year now in January, have you guys discussed between Summer, Steve and Mitch about a new quota or same quota for the raking of cockles?
Yes, good question. And of course, yes, we have had that discussion internally. And at this point, we don't have the solid estimates of biomass enough to really make a recommendation whether to stay the same or decrease or increase. So again, we just wanted to share the preliminary results with you right now, knowing that that's a key question. So we'll focus on that when Tony's back at work here at the end of the month and
Mhm.
moving on from there.
It's on our agenda for sure.
Yes, yeah.
Will you
Oh,
guys
okay.
decide that? Or do we, as a committee, were we gonna have any say in that?
Well, I hope that we'll bring those numbers to you here at our next meeting. So we should be able to discuss those. Depending what they are, of course, we have to manage the fishery in real time.
Yep.
So, yeah,
Cause negatives will be coming and guys will be definitely getting out there,
Yeah.
especially with good weather, and get going on that. And it gets there fast at 80,000 pounds for sure.
Yeah.
Could you point out, by the Garibaldi plat where pig and sow is? Because we keep talking
Sure.
about that as one of our compromise things.
It's right here.
I think that's that
Yeah,
much.
all right, so is that gonna be surveyed this summer? Or is that actually, because that sounded like we didn't have a lot of data on it in the past.
Those are just rock islands, aren't
We
they?
did a lot of diving there last
Yeah, you
year.
do a lot,
Yeah.
and I
Oh,
say
for
we don't have.
some Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just wondering what it is because we've talked about that as one of our things to negotiate.
Yeah,
And sort of even submitted that as a suggestion. But, so I'm wondering, are we looking at all that data this summer to know? Is that part of the data?
Yeah,
And how
so-
far up the channel are we going?
Good questions. Let me read your own recommendations that were in your report to us and our report back. So on this issue, TBCAC recommended to open additional areas in Tillamook Bay, the sow and pigs to commercial harvest of bait clams. And then in the seeker context, he said expand the seeker surveys to include the sow and pigs area and other sites with butterflies.
And that is gonna happen.
Well, that's been your recommendation to us here.
So remind me somewhere with your arrow, Shane, where is the closed area there now? I see the sound pigs.
That's
Very
not what
close
it
there.
is without seeing the channel markers on there. 'Cause
It
that's
is.
Where the Coast Guard tower is, and channel markers all would go to the,
Oh, okay, so
Hobsonville.
it's, yeah, it's hard to.
It's hard to say on this scale, yeah.
If you shoot the curve, yeah,
yeah, it is hard
it's
to,
hard to tell.
Yeah.
That's not the whole map.
Channel markers on the-
Yeah, you can't
Yeah.
really see, there's no good way to compare it.
Right.
Yeah.
You were doing quite a bit of diving on the south.
Yes,
Yeah.
and see, we've been hitting like more of the
Yeah.
northwest side, and ideally it'd be cool, cause heading more inland towards the east, like where it said, like the Garibaldi Flats, like kind of going that way, that's the closed off area.
yeah, yeah,
And there's still like a lot of good clam spots over there that would be
Yeah.
nice to have open, that say we're gonna be regulated over in Hobsonville.
Mhm.
To get at Claire's point, as we continue through here, I recall that we requested additional money from ODFW to be able to do the scuba surveys in and around this area.
So they are being done this.
Well, they're being scheduled. We haven't done it yet. Yeah.
What type of planning are you getting there?
Oh, butter, tons of butter, creating cockles, loads of gapers there.
Yeah.
A lot of gapers, but yeah, we're just finished the handbag and everything.
Summer, do you encounter the non-native little necks to the Manillas?
Great question. Yeah, we did see Manila littlenecks in our survey, mostly isolated to the Garibaldi flat area and not in high densities, but we did observe them.
So,
No.
and they're relatively.
Now, is that, and they're naturally recruiting? They were deliberately outplanted. And these are, but they must be recruiting. They can't be those
Oh, yeah.
same individuals over all these years, because that's
No.
stopped a long time ago.
There used to be about 3 spots you could find them in the bay.
Yeah.
One of them was the Garibaldi flat, and the other couple are on that map, but I don't think they're there.
The natives are non-native.
Manila.
Manilas.
Yeah.
And right now, our analysis has really been restricted to the big four. So we haven't looked at, purple varnish clams, anything, any soft shells or Manila littlenecks.
When are the 2023 intertidal samplings gonna restart?
So they'll be out there every time they can between subtitle surveys. It'll be a little more limited, probably in the early part of the season, since we have to get those done before the June 30 cutoff. But for the good low tides starting in April, they'll be out there doing intertidal.
How many samples you're gonna try to take?
There's still a good amount to be done in the parts of the bay that haven't been sampled. So continuing fog flat here, also what we're calling Bay Ocean South, which continues from this line down quite a ways. It's a large flat. So there are a couple areas that still need to be sampled. So I think they'll be out there for quite a while.
Probably the same number of dots.
Roughly, I would say same number of dots, if not a bit less.
But now you and Mo, neither you nor Mo.
No, neither me nor Mo will be up there. I'll probably still be helping out.
You're gonna be doing it?
No, but
Steve will be up there.
He's gonna sit there.
I finished interviewing good candidates.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
to fill those
Okay.
vacancies.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll let people,
I was
won't be
gonna
me.
say, we'll be seeing you in our office.
So Summer, you have been hands-on with these, oh, that's good.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I've been very hands-on with this.
Yeah, Brett Summer was part of the team and she was not only part of the team, she was a leader, one of the
Oh.
crew leaders for the team that worked out there last spring and summer.
Yep.
Should be great for us then. Yeah, good.
Yeah, I don't know, it's bugging me, I gotta try this. I don't know that I can really draw the closure line,
Go for it, though.
but I'm gonna try.
You're not gonna see it, Brett, since it'll be on there, but I'll mirror what he's doing.
It's really hard to see with that.
And it kind of comes down the middle of the channel, and I think the Sow and Pigs is on the closed side of it, isn't that correct?
No, the sound page is on the open side, like. this.
Okay, so-
We've been like right on the line, so we got it on deck.
And then it
Got
comes
ourselves up.
over here to Hobsonville Point,
Right. Mhm.
Yeah.
somewhere right there, where the buoy 13 is. There, that's a boat. Anyway,
Yeah, it's hard to draw the lines around there. Yeah.
Been out there a million times and even like this happens so like.
I mean,
Yeah.
there is a map here with that on there, if any of you want to see this.
All
I
right.
guess, does the group feel like this preliminary data helps progress the discussions at all, at this point? With respect to potential, special management areas? Or is that something that we just kind of need the hard data? And given that there's so much spatial variability, would a hard special management area necessarily be the right way to go if you're and are moving around all the time? Just some of the things to think about, but
You have to be careful, watch out what you
yeah,
for, because it could change, that's the.
it could change within the 10 years.
Well, yeah, the one, just an observation from my own thought process, this Bay Ocean North. I don't know that well, but you talked about some erosion that was occurring
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
I mean, that takes nothing that could easily have a really substantial impact on what you're seeing.
Yeah.
It could continue, it may not, who knows? It's
Well, and
a bit dangerous, it's a bit risky, if you will, because the way this bay moves around a little bit too.
Yeah.
they just finished the work on the jetty, so the
Yeah.
hydrology is gonna completely change, so your erosion might be different.
Yeah.
So that is
Like-
done.
Uh-huh.
Is
On
it
the
done?
north side.
Yeah.
But they're gonna start the south side, in a year?
Yeah, something like that.
So that's really gonna change,
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's gonna impact that, yeah. So just some things to think
Yeah.
about when we're talking about
I mean,
designated areas.
if this had come up with a lot more red arrows on it, I'd have, yeah. Then I personally would have probably said, we need some more information to be able to see what does that mean? I realize this is still not numbers, it's
Yeah.
not mass, but the arrows are mostly green and it's risky as a biologist to figure out how you move that around. I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know. I certainly would love to have some of the subtitles tied together with it. That'll tell you something else. I was gonna ask the nasty question of what do you believe you can assume the kinds of positive responses you see here might also lend themselves, when we see the subtitle data, you got any, that's a crystal ball. Anybody else? Yeah, I wasn't gonna ask him, I thought, well, hey, we're in.
I'd never draw that line, but, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's a different survey, with
Sure.
different pressures, with the dive clam fishery,
Sure.
so. I'm not sure that we will see,
Yeah, well, it's not a good question, but it's still something that, it would be nice to see. Now, if you were to show us that same picture and all arrows were red,
Yeah,
Yeah.
then I've got, then I've got some real concerns. I mean, you know, I'm trying to figure out how that goes together, but I won't presuppose what that'll look like.
yeah. Yeah, subtitle's a big part of the picture that,
Oh, yeah.
that we still don't have quite
I
yet.
mean, it's probably represents, I suppose, a big piece of your spawning biomass.
Completely, and a
Yeah,
large part
So
of the,
that's the key to
yeah,
We're increasing
Totally.
numbers there, so
Yeah.
it should be in good shape.
yeah.
I asked somebody to pull this up just to follow up on the issue over dredging and jetty repair as well. So I don't know what's going on with periodic dredging of the Garibaldi Marina. I would assume that when dredging does take place, that they do in-water, in-bay disposal rather than on land or ship it out to sea. You know what happens?
Oh.
Do you know?
Greg Andy, I wish he was here, because I think he spoke to that dredging issue,
Mhm.
one of our meetings. And basically, they dredge it, dump it right there, and it comes back.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're going out there, you'll see like the dredging port, we'll stop, you know, the big old pipe that's going out in the
Right.
bay, going out near Sound Pig, or actually, kind of like right near the, going past the,
Boat
the
station.
sport docks, where the,
Yeah.
the sport is put ground,
Mm.
dock, up here.
Yeah,
That's where they just like.
the Coast Guard boathouse is
Yeah.
right in that area.
In-bay.
Yeah.
Well, supposedly they're doing it at a time when the water's gonna go out, but it seems
It's
to have
just-
built up that sandbar right there coming out of the,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
moored, you know,
Yeah.
out of the boat basin.
Uh-huh.
I thought I remembered seeing a pipe one time, and it was just one time I was up here, that, they were doing that pipe up on the, the east side of the marina, that big open area. They ever done on land disposal there? Or am I?
So I just seen the online.
Remembering.
I have years, I mean, I've never have.
I wanted to raise that up because that's common in some of the other days as well. that-
Which really concerns me with the whole dredging thing, because like I've done a lot of diving down in Uquina and also Coos Bay, and they're doing a lot. When we're go down there, think about 2015 or 2016, and then when I was back down there in 2019, when they're doing all the dredging, completely different. Well, it was just like mud, because they're just dumping like right at the bar and it all just washes right back in, and it was just caked with mud down there.
Mm.
For clams I was normally seeing on the ground, it's like about a foot under all the mud that.
Yeah.
It was.
So they're gonna smother.
Mhm, exactly.
So that's a
So the dredging is a
concern.
huge concern for me,
Yeah,
huge.
that's a dredge concern.
Mhm.
And again, that's the marina dredge. That's
Yeah.
not the Corps of Engineers
Right,
jetty.
right.
Have to.
Well, it's the state, it's, you know, the state owns that dredge.
Yeah.
So,
Is there a rule about where they have to dump, or that's just convenient?
Well, typically, if it's clean sediment, it's approved then for in-bay disposal in water. If it's laden with heavy metals or oil, grease or something along those lines, then it can't go back in the water. It has to be disposed of on land somewhere.
but you gotta remember, Oregon Washington Plywood Mill was the old mill marina. And so there's all kind of contaminants, you know, they probably are leaching in the area that
So
they're,
we maybe shouldn't be putting any of that back in the bay.
that's what I would think.
Mhm.
My understanding that there are samples tested and they have
Yeah.
that criteria. So if it comes up clean, then it's easy and cheap to dispose of it in water. But if it's dirty, then they can't do that.
How much more expensive is it to dispose of on land?
Oh,
No, I
That's a long way.
You would have to put his waste down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, right there.
Getting it out of it.
You get water, you know,
Is
truckloads.
that true of any sediment off the bottom? It has to go to the.
If it's contaminated,
So it contaminated, if it's not contaminated. It could be
it sounds like they could dispose of it in water, but
In support of what Shane's observations are, I can say that I've seen definite conflict between the Corps of Engineers responsible for getting, all the sediment out, and then the local marina dumping sediment back in. Like,
We've done studies on the clams in Neatards Bay from when people go in, we call it trenching, where they just dig out huge amounts and pile huge amounts of sand.
Mm.
And looked at tidal movements over the rest of that tide, and it's killing clams. It kills clams because you go in and it
Yeah.
removes about 6 inches on a tidal thing, and it removes, then it packs down.
Mm.
Then if the clams can't get their neck through, when you dig in there, there's just piles of dead stinking clams right next to where they trenched, and you
Yeah.
can see it. I mean, we've seen that all over the place, and we've done drone flights over and photographed after, when people are leaving, photographed and then photographed after the next tide and the next tide and the next tide in the same spots and then got out and dug in those areas and there's dead clams and it didn't very much stuff. So I really hate to see dumping a lot of sediment and,
Yeah.
I understand right in the middle of the channel, but that's also where your highest density of clams and breeders are.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow.
Mhm.
I don't know, to me, it's a bad practice, although the rivers do it on every storm, it's a normal process, but for us to do it concentrated, and because when we do it, we've taken out feet of sediment, it's not like a few inches, of course, that's across the whole forest coming down, but I mean, I don't know, it's something that I don't know the answer to, but it really bothers me, it really bothers
Well, I understand that when Bay Ocean breached, the
me. It's
clams,
filled in that entire area. On the
Yeah.
south,
I mean, it was like 20 years before some of those clams had recovered.
most of it.
So Christie, to answer your question you asked about, how do we feel about it? Do we have enough to make decisions? I mean, it's, to me, can you go back to the pyramids? With the native little necks are a little hard for me to put into the picture because
Yeah.
they're so low in density, but for the big three up there on the top, it's, if you just took that at face value, the current management that is currently occurring at the level it is occurring, depending upon, seems to be sustaining or increasing those populations. Now, that's in the absence of the subtitle data, so it's a little hard to know, but with the exception of Bay Ocean North, where we've got more looking to do, that would indicate to me a reasonable success with the current management we have. Doesn't say anything about, anything else you do from here on, but it certainly looks like it's allowing for sustainability based on what they've found so far.
Except for Bay Ocean
Yeah,
North, which is,
Right.
Yeah, which you still have to get that one side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Data. So it
So-
shows that it's sustainable as far as total biomass, but not necessarily the split between recreational and commercial.
No, all you can say from it at this point, and again, this is just my opinion,
Yeah.
all you can say is the current management strategies that have been employed, either they, at least the intertidal and subtitle probably plays into it somehow, I don't know where, but the current management strategies that are being used, whether they be the quotas, the areas being done, whatever, they still seem to be allowing for sustainable or growing biomass estimates based on that.
Yeah.
That was a good science. If I could certainly sit down and dig into the details, go
Yeah.
way down in there.
Totally.
But just from the standpoint of what we've been asked to look at, that's what it tells me.
and so the reason I got involved was Bay Ocean North, and what I see, when I look at it, I don't look on the outsides, because I don't know what, there's no conflict there.
Mhm.
I see that we need to help that one section where we have recreational and commercials in conflict, and that,
You got it on Middle Flat too. Shane and I could go out and argue about Middle Flat as well. I mean, a lot of people harvest there as well, maybe not as many. But it's in both places. It just happens to be that it doesn't seem to be manifesting itself as greatly on Middle Flat as it does on Bay Ocean North. I'd have expected to see, from my own observations on the Middle Flat, I thought I'd see it completely different. I didn't think I'd see green arrows on it. That's just my observation, which obviously means that one little sampling doesn't cover it. So I would agree. I'd have thought I'd have seen the same red arrows over there that you're seeing, but I'm not.
Well, I think when you do your future surveys, you'll find out if that's caused by the current change
Right.
or if it's a
Right.
planning activity, because we can't tell from. And my
No,
guess is the current change is probably a bigger player
could be.
than harvest.
well, I think harvest, because if you look at the numbers of the clams that have come out of there,
There's been a lot of gapers.
I mean, we talked about it was like this, and then it just shot right off, which you guys said was not sustainable. The amount of clams that were being harvested.
We acted, in a timely manner, because we did not want to see that curve continue to skyrocket upwards.
Mhm.
That did get to the cockle raking in 2018, hit 100 and 20,000 pounds, which isn't too much more really.
And so when I go
than
out,
the 80 we're set at now, and we feel that that is a sustainable harvest level.
right, when I
That
go out
10%.
and see the big bags of clams, you know, the commercial bags on the side of the thing, they're on the Bay Ocean North. They're not, I don't see the big, huge bags lined up on the middle flat that I see.
No.
Maybe because it's more accessible.
Brett could tell us, I've seen
Yeah.
them out there, I've been right there when
Yeah.
they're sampling, but
Well, I think-
I'm enjoying not seeing.
Are you talking about like 5-6 years ago, Barbara, with those big bags?
Yes.
That was because we had an opportunity to see what we could do with the gapers, and the price was up and we could do it. You know, but those kids aren't doing it anymore. Number one, and they were really good at what they did. Number two, but I don't think you see the commercial activity in the gapers as you do the cockles for sure.
I agree. And the reason that I targeted gapers myself, I don't anymore, like I've confessed, I now go up to Clatsop County and get razor clams. But the reason I targeted gapers was because of the size limit on that the commercials were taking anything of a decent size of the cockles, leaving, you know, I get 20 cockles about this big, it's good for one pot of, you know, one bowl of soup, you know, not. So that I would target the gapers because you get more meat for your 12 versus 20 that are the size of a walnut, you know,
Yeah.
so.
That is the piece of the puzzle, the size piece is a piece of the puzzle we don't have.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's be nice to see it.
Definitely.
But I think if the numbers like this, not in my area, I'm all focused in the center. But if we're looking at the subtitle and they have got those arrows that are going up, there's no reason that those quotas, like the commercial divers have been asking for, aren't increased.
No, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of stuff in place. Me personally, I think that 2 3/4, 5 years ago has helped the cockle population no matter what. They roll around a little bit different than definitely the gapers. You don't have the commercial activity with the gapers as you do with the cockles. There's more and more people doing the cockle raking because of price. The price is outrageous for bait right now, and guys can go make a living just off of going out and getting 300 pounds of raked cockles. And I think more guys have found out it's good enough to go do. I think, me personally, 80, you're going to be done definitely by the 1st of June. We used to go all the way through with no limit. I think it needs to be 120 with the arrows going the way it's going, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I share, you heard, I was very careful how I said it. I said that the current management strategies are sustainable. I'm not as convinced as you maybe are, Barbara, that those, until I see some more information, I'm not sure it warrants increases. But that's something, that's more.
No, I'm not saying
That's more
this.
in-depth evaluation.
I'm saying
I see here.
we need to see the subtitle, not the intertitle.
Yeah.
Because it's the subtitle guys that have been operating under a quota for forever, for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And have said, well, we go down there, it's just, you know, what they describe, I haven't seen it, but it sounds like there's just huge amounts of biomass, and if the subtitle, not the intertitle,
Right.
it shows those arrows or bigger ones going up, then, you know, maybe you
Maybe.
look at
Maybe.
adjusting that.
Sure, I mean,
that
that's
stuff.
how you approach it with an open mind. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, I will say it one more time. I said it at our meeting where we didn't have ODFW there, but in order for me to be successful as a recreational clammer, I have to have some pretty good numbers of clams around. There has to be, it's okay to have some surpluses so that I can be successful as a sport clamor and do it in a reasonable amount of time. You know, all of my 6 and 8 and 12-year-old kids can't be out there 3 hours looking for cockles. They might all be able to find them eventually if you spend 3 hours. But I need some surpluses around. There has to be some reasonable numbers of biomass in the area for me to be successful and do it in a way that's timely. Now, we all have different ideas of what timely is, but it's okay to have some surpluses, so we don't have to maximize like we do on a lot of our other fisheries management. We're not trying to do maximum sustained yield. We shouldn't have to, because if we do that, you and I as a sport person are gonna have a hell of a time getting our clams in a reasonable amount of time. So there's room to maneuver there, but you know, we want to be careful when we do that.
Yeah, that's the management goal, is to leave a very, very healthy broodstock population, which can be harvested.
But
So
there's plenty of room for looking at that. I think we want to approach it with an open mind, because you're right, Barbara. It certainly could show us a place to do some liberalization, if you will. We just have to be very careful with that, because I think not only are the data here variable, the biomass estimates are going to be variable as hell too, depending upon what it is that's really influencing those populations. And I don't know that this sampling is going to tell us what it is that influences ups and downs.
Likely not, no.
So we gotta be careful.
know that there will always be ups and downs.
Right.
That we gotta back up.
I'm pleased. I'm pleased with what I see here. I didn't expect this. I personally didn't expect.
I have a question for you, sir.
Yeah.
When you're doing your sampling, well, let's use Bay Ocean North as an example. Doesn't that also include some of the oyster beds, that area, or is that further?
Let me pull it up, but, so we really stopped at Bay Ocean North. This stop really was the start of oyster aquaculture plats, but, sampling will continue south from that line into what we're calling Bay Ocean South, and include a lot more oyster aquaculture area in 2023.
So, well, thank you. Do you notice any difference in the density of clams in the oyster?
Good question. My initial response is no, but I would really need to dive into the numbers, because, you know, it's hard to know based on going to different sites when there is variability, you know, between sites.
Obviously, I'm going there because I'm curious about the mechanical removal. And whether that has an impact.
Yeah, and I think after the 2023 survey, when there's a lot more data in oyster aquacultures, we could get at that question a lot better, and it would be interesting.
You mean actual mechanical dredging of oysters in that area?
Yeah.
Is that allowed there?
It
I
depends
thought
on
that
which
was all
plat.
hand harvest.
Yeah, it depends on exactly which plat you're talking about. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
There is,
I've seen it, so.
Intertidal mechanical oyster harvest, huh? I think there was a bunch in coups and a little bit in your cleanup, but
There's the heroin, right? So breaking up of oysters. So, some of the commercial mariculture folks will drag it's not actually a dredge, but it's this heroin.
Yeah.
And it has tines that go down and grabs clusters of oysters off the bottom and breaks them up. And some of those come up when they pull that heroin up and they clean off all the oysters that are stuck in there. But it's generally, my understanding is an intent to break up clusters rather than simply suck up the whole bottom, to dredge up the whole bottom.
and that's from a boat,
That's from a boat. That's in the-
a drag.
Yes.
Arrow.
Baskets or something.
There's all kinds of techniques. Then there's hand picking, so crews go out and physically pick them up, put it in a basket, and then a boat will come out and lift the basket up.
Must be.
I wondered how come you know, be out on, Bay Ocean North and finding oysters, you know?
yeah, you do see them, definitely.
All the way or whatever,
Yeah,
feral oysters.
yeah, stray oysters.
Not allowed to pick one up.
Unless you get the owner's permission.
Yeah, how do you know who owns it?
I don't know. But like, no, if on these oyster plats, correct me if I'm wrong, if you know the grower and he says, sure, Barbara, you can go out and get a bushel today.
No, I don't like oysters.
Okay.
And I told people, say, wow, it's out there, and I got all these oysters, and I said, you can't take that.
Yeah, yeah, even though you do see them on Bay Ocean North, for sure.
Right.
So I just wanted to do a time check, see if everybody feels like they've had a chance to ask some or all of the questions that you might have for this round. Knowing that next time we're gonna grill you with the real numbers, we show some real numbers,
For sure.
yeah.
You're on vacation that day, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm out. I'm kidding.
Does everybody feel okay going on to the next item? All right, so,
I want to say thanks again.
Yeah.
So again, we were excited to bring these numbers forward and like Steve, we were feeling good about them. They look pretty good. And we look forward to digging in and doing a detailed analysis here over the next few weeks.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I'd like to say thanks for
Yeah.
summer.
yeah, again, another clap.
Of course.
Questions, and we would have postponed to the next meeting and the next.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to. Happy we have stuff we can finally share with you guys.
And that truly was quick analysis too, because you guys didn't finish your surveys until just recently.
Yeah.
Well, she's gonna dive deeper into it for our next.
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah.
Spreadsheets are kind of long.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
So the next part is overview of the remaining topics. So the last time we got together, we kind of had more of an informal group. That was the time we got together without ODFW at our, at the boathouse. And we talked about all of the other, items that we had on our long list of things that we were going to discuss. And so we had our, flip chart papers and people use Post-it notes and I had put things on, a Google Doc for folks to give comments to. And what I wanted to do was just share with you what I did with all of that information and then see where we go from there. So do you have the ability to call up that Google Doc?
I believe I can. I might
That
gonna,
just might help,
I'm
Brett,
gonna mess everything up if I.
since he's
Okay,
on the-
that would be great, Steve.
Yeah, since he's on the
Yeah.
remote, he won't be able to see what I'm handing out.
Yep, we'll pull that up right here.
If you could pass
This
it
will-
around. So what I
sure.
did was,
Make sure.
we took all of those, flip charts with all of the different Post-it notes, and I had some of the folks in my office help me out. And, you can see on the back side of each one of these pages that I left the charts up there in the colors. Those were the original flip charts and all of the Post-it notes that were there. And, so we have them in each topic, and I tried to decode what was on there and put them into these different topics. So if you just look at the very first page, for instance, it starts off with stock assessments, and that's what's highlighted in green. And so we summarized what the issue was. That was based just very generalized. Then it follows with the sections from the Senate bill that we're supposed to be addressing. And then the proposed solutions and questions and all of that was based on what was from these flip charts. And so I did that, and I had two folks from the staff help me do that for each one of these topics that we were supposed to be discussing. So this was our best interpretation. So some of these questions may be completely wrong, and we apologize for that. We might not have understood what you were trying to say. But the idea was we were trying to see if we couldn't come up with how do we quickly go through in the timeframes that we have left all of these various topics. And were there various options that we wanted to discuss? In some circumstances, was there information that we needed from ODFW? So for instance, under renewal requirements, there were additional questions. And so there was, what information do you have and what other questions should we ask each other or try to figure out what we want to do? And so this was meant to be the next round of talking points.
Mhm.
This is just my interpretation of what we put together. It's not meant to be, this is what we all said. It's just meeting notes, let's just say. So what I'm hoping to do, because we don't have very much time, is that I'm hoping that we will agree to meet in between, in smaller groups, between those quarterly meetings. The quarterly meetings will be the whole entire group with ODFW and all of that. But in the months between then, we can agree to have all of us meet or some of us meet to discuss one or two topics. And I'm hoping that each one of us will take at least one of these topics and be the kind of lead on it. Because I can't do much more. I came back after the New Year and two of my staff resigned. So I am now in a crunch for hiring people. So, and unfortunately, it was the two staff that helped me with this.
Brett,
It was Gina Christensen and Jessica.
do you have
Taylor.
access
So,
to this
um,
list?
So
Oh, yes,
I
see
was
it.
kind of at the limit of being
Okay,
able to.
Do you have another copy that you can pull up on your own laptop?
Let me
If
see
not,
if
I can, okay,
I'm willing to kind of take the lead on the first one, on working with means and methods for interim stock assessments between the 10-year period. And the reason for that is because TEP
think
is
Christy
about
shared it
to
with you.
receive a lot of money from
Send
the
an email?
state to buy instrumentation.
yep, give me a minute and
And
I'll
so we could
send it.
theoretically be able to get the instruments needed to do some of this work. If there was like a potential to do some remote sensing, or if there was a potential to do some other stuff. And so what I'd like to do is lead the talk with you guys to, and with Tony, to see if there are ways to do interim testing, provide them with data, so we don't have to wait 10 years to do that. So I'm willing to take the lead on this one, but I would love if other people would take the lead on other ones and kind of see how you want to frame this. Do you want to consider this further? If two people want to take each one, that would be great.
Does the Brett
If
Smith at
somebody wants
Hotmail
to help me
Yes,
with
dot
this,
com works? Okay,
that would
sending
be
it to you now.
great. So
Awesome.
if you could, if you guys are all in agreement, could we go through these and see if somebody's like, if this is a pet issue for somebody, and if you would like to sign up for these and carry the torch for it, so that we could try to get through these quicker. One of the ones that's kind of towards the end was the issue of bycatch. You know, we may decide that that's beyond what this group wants to handle. You know, that's also an option. So, is that all okay with you guys? Do you want to give this a try, or what are you guys' thoughts on how to handle the rest of all of these issues? Because there are a lot of them that we said we wanted to tackle.
Christian, observation, with the first two are. I think the right term. I'll go, the latter topics, which the renewals and the transferability and the IFUs. Do we need to do some prioritization of those before we start to? I would ask the group if those are big topics. They're not
taking out, they put a lot of heads there. I think that's something that's gotta be difficult, you know, I think.
So we-
The IQ.
Yeah.
Yeah. For that, for example, is a big one.
Yeah, that is a big one. That, I would say personally, that is not my business because I'm on the sports side of this thing, but the IFU piece is bigger than us in this world.
Yeah.
It's not something
That's
that,
not an easy thing, no, yeah.
yeah, it's big. And it's not something that without a whole bunch of extra help and so on and so forth, I don't think it's attainable, but I'm a sport rep on this thing and I'm not here to espouse one way or another, but just in my experience, it tells me that is a huge. And I know it's important to Craig. He isn't here, but I'm not saying it because if he was here, I'd say it too.
Yeah.
So,
Well, those are the sorts of things just in my head that, you know, we can do a number of things. We could, as a group, vote on whether or not we want to proceed on it. Or we could vote on, we want to recommend that this is something that ODFW forms another committee, or somebody else forms another committee to study this, or whatever, you know, we can, or we can try to tackle it. You know, there are any number of steps that we can take. We can punt, we can say, you know, this needs further study, or we can try to do it. So, you know, it's kind of up to this group, but we have it on our list. We've set it in our interim report, so we have to have some sort of resolution on each one of these topics now. Even if it is, we've discussed it, we decided it's too big for our group.
Option one, we don't do anything.
Right, right. And so in some of these, the question is, do we want to make a recommendation on this? So, yes, and that's a group decision, you know, so, I'm happy to consider all of those options, and we can make it as formal as we want to, you know, a motion to vote or whatever. We don't have to do that today. And I know you guys haven't had a chance to even look at this yet, so you don't have to make those decisions today, but.
So if it says Bay Balm, it really is, it should be Bay Clan.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Unless you wanted to make a motion to, like rename things. You know? Yes, yes. This was definitely just a first pass of trying to interpret what we had there and put it in some sort of. Oh, the other thing I should say, and put it in some sort of context of should we even be addressing this from the viewpoint of from Senate Bill 1025. I tried to show how is this topic applicable to this group. So, you know, you can see on the very first page, there are several of those subsections that this is applicable to. Some of the other ones I was, oh, how would this be applicable, you know?
Just because there's a group that was
Yes.
formed to discuss issues.
Right.
That's how it becomes applicable.
Right.
So Christie, you don't need to make any excuses for what you have here. You know, this comes very close, in my reading of it, to what we talked about. I mean,
Yeah,
you
and
were
I'm sorry
trying to
about
interpret
this.
hieroglyphics, frankly, from what was on it. And I thought you did it. I thought you and your staff did a wonderful job. So don't feel like you've got to, you know, this gives us plenty to work
Yes.
with as it is if we choose to do so.
Yes.
It's like
And-
mission impossible
Yeah, and don't,
to accept.
you won't hurt my feelings if you find all sorts of mistakes and nonsense in here, you know? We could
No, I
have.
think you did a fabulous job.
So, ideas on how you guys would like to proceed with all of these other topics. Because as you see, we don't have very many months left to try to address all of these things. Assuming worst case, we do not get an extension.
To jump in, you know, I went over this and I was trying to answer the questions. And I would be super happy to talk with any individuals or subgroups or anything, you know, on the phone, via email, to really help these questions get fleshed out. So whatever the group decides, anyone reach out anytime and I'll try to fill in the gaps.
Brett, are you able to see this now? Are you able to
I
access this?
printed one out.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you could get, so this is on that Google Doc that we were all working from? That's this now. I've updated it, so you have it hard copy and you've got it there too. Yeah. And if you would rather, maybe what you would rather do is just take some time to read through this and we get together maybe in a month and maybe we do it by Zoom, or we can get together in person and we can all say, which ones we want to tackle. And at that point, because I know this is a lot.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Digest.
I like the idea of letting us look at this,
Yeah.
think it through a
Yeah.
bit. I'd also like, if at all possible, to have Craig.
Yes,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
absolutely has
Yeah,
to.
for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
And I don't know how we make sure that Craig is here. Maybe bring lunch or something.
He'll be able to hear the recording
Yeah,
of this one, so he won't have missed out totally, you know, and because this is on the Google Drive, you know, he'll be able to have a copy of it.
but I miss his input.
Yeah.
No, yeah, for sure, no, he's probably asked it for sure.
He needs to be here.
Yeah.
Christie, I'm gonna say something that I'm maybe changing my mind a little bit of how we've talked before. I am uncomfortable as a group trying to tackle these, the ones that are associated with the renewals and the transferability. I'm uncomfortable doing that without an ODFW rep there to help us. I used to know these things in my head, how it all worked and all that stuff, but I don't anymore. And having that knowledge is important, I think, to being able to even discuss it. Because if we start making assumptions about how all those things work,
Mhm.
I don't have any problem with working on them and trying to make them, you know, change them or whatever we need to do. But I think we've got to have somebody from ODFW there to help us through those. The other stuff, the ones that you said you'd lead and some others, that was certainly the key point of the legislation, and I'm comfortable working on those. I think we've all got pretty good understanding of how that works and how it fits with what we just saw. But the stuff associated with the commercial details,
Mhm.
I think we have to have somebody in the room from ODFW to be sure we're not getting down a real rabbit hole. And believe me, there are rabbit holes all over those issues.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, I don't know, Brett, at one time I thought you'd probably agree with me, but maybe you do or maybe you don't. I don't know.
For sure. I think, you know, we can talk about it, but ultimately they have the decision on those kind of things.
Well, I think it would be helpful then if when you're reading through these, go through on that Google Drive and add to the questions. What other questions are you guys gonna have? So that when we do get together, we can start piling them on, you know, and maybe when we see all the questions, our first question is, do we really want to tackle this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think
Yeah.
maybe Mitch could be available for us, you
Yeah.
know, like you said, we could have an interim month. We could grab him on a Zoom for,
Mm-hmm,
you know, a couple of hours or so to
Yeah.
help us understand what we're looking at. I mean, if you told me today to just describe transferability, and not that I would never believe Shane when he tells me, but does he have all the details? You know, if you were trying to describe it to me, you know how it works for you, but I don't know how it works for you.
Correct, correct.
You know,
So, but that's not really you guys, is licensing another? What, you're nodding
Yeah,
it
they're-
as you guys?
No, I'm not in agreement with, that it's not us directly, you know, we're.
Right, you're
managing-
management, so
Yes.
we would need to have someone that really was the nuts and bolts of licensing and how the commercial permit system works in the different fisheries.
We can,
We can answer a lot of
yeah,
those
we can
questions.
answer, I mean, I'm putting them
Leave
out.
that out there, because that's, the one question in here was like, oh, are all these, you know, rules stated? And yes, they are Oregon administrative rules that go over all those things.
But just,
They're not a real easy read.
that's what I'm saying, just being able to read them is different than having an expert that has already, you know, parsed them out and lives with it and writes them and adapts them, you know, that's the expert we would need to have sitting here at the table for that, I think.
And again, if, you know, the longer and more detailed these questions are, the better I can answer them or find the right person to answer them.
and I think that's certainly, I think our commercial representatives on this committee should be the ones diving in depth into this thing. I wouldn't know what the right questions to have.
No, for sure.
and certainly, the second one on there was about the special management areas, you
Right.
know, that's probably both commercial and.
No, we
You
need,
know, that needs to be a lot of.
we need a
questions on
mixed
both
group.
sides, You know,
And so, you know, I'm looking through page 3.
mhm,
3/4 of the way down, it says, the middle flat, the most productive clam bed, is also the one that sees all the decreasing arrows. So, you know, that is a concern to me,
right,
obviously,
right.
so.
Yeah, and there may be other options, you know, these were just the ones that we were just spitting out.
Well, you know, we're not fishing for Chinook salmon in the bay, maybe we set aside an area and have no clamming at all for a year or two. No, just one area.
No, no.
I'm not speaking of things.
No, I'm just joking about it.
All right, so would you guys all be up for meeting in about a month? After you've had a chance to digest and, in the meantime, like start asking questions or start writing down your questions and would Zoom be okay for the next one? Or do you want to get together in person?
Let's get together in person.
Yeah.
Okay, and we can still have the Zoom option. That way,
Right.
if people can't come.
That's helpful to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know you guys come from pretty far too, so.
But in the next month, wouldn't it just be us? We wouldn't need.
It's up to you. I guess you'll be invited, but maybe one person could come, maybe.
Yeah,
all three of you
we're
have
happy
to.
to attend if
Okay.
you'd like for us to be there.
That'd be great.
But if
Yeah.
we're causing problems, you know, we're not present, then.
I'd love to have Steve, we probably could do, you high dollar guys, we can't afford you. We can only use you high dollar guys on the third.
And in the meantime, I can go in and try to start answering some of these and maybe even ask other questions of the questions.
Yeah,
And if that's a live document, anyone can throw in new questions there anytime, and I'll try to get to them.
even you guys.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
here's what it would take to change this, act of God, sort of thing. That would be helpful. And
There are a few of those, they're probably statutory too, I'll bet you. I'll
exactly.
bet you there's some administrative rule and some statutory buried in there.
But that's helpful to know then, because if that is something that we really feel as a group strongly about, then our recommendation becomes, we need you to pass this or change this statute,
Right.
because our final report needs to be our specific recommendations. Of what needs to happen. Does ODFW need to do something? Does the legislature need something? It needs to be very specific. So.
And the legislators will pay attention if it says that they have to do something.
Yeah. So that's what that next part of that agenda was all about. Anybody want extra copies? I made some more.
Yeah, I'll take an extra copy.
I'll take one as well.
If you want to mark them up, go right ahead.
How do we reach out to Craig since he wasn't able to be here? How do we share with him? I guess he can watch that.
Yes, you should be able to
Website.
watch the whole meeting.
Okay, good.
And I don't think we've passed out I think everything that we've passed out here today, we've already sent out to everybody.
Yep.
Email.
Yep.
Do you guys want to try to set a date now, or should we do a group, doodle poll sort of thing?
Next month?
Yeah.
Next month's February.
I think you gotta do a Google.
Probably do it, well, yeah.
So we make
Yeah.
sure we get.
Doodle poll.
Oh, right, because we need Craig.
Yeah.
But remember, he said this is one of the times he was available and he isn't here, so.
Yeah, but you weren't available.
That's because I prioritized.
All right, dinner included. Something like that.
So where do we want to meet?
Does this work well for everybody?
That was great for me.
This is
Yeah.
good.
Cause I don't know how easy it is to set up Zoom and all of that over in Garibaldi at the boat house.
No, we do it all the time.
Do you?
Yeah.
Cause,
Yeah, that's fine.
Sure.
It hasn't been successful, but we since we changed our internet
okay.
provider.
It's good to
'Cause
know.
our office is not, we could do it, but,
As long
it's
as
kind
it's
of.
guaranteed in February, when you walk out that dock and get
Yeah.
blown off into the bay.
This is probably better in winter time.
Yeah.
This is probably better.
Yeah, a lot more fun in the summer. The winter time might not be.
So we might elicit your help to
All right.
Try to-
secure this room.
to secure the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, well, we'll try.
Then we all get to go home with souvenirs. We get to take.
Yeah, yeah.
I got scooter.
All the random animals too. So is there anything else that the group would like to discuss?
Well, I think I just want to thank our newest employee. You were just so spot on with the information that you brought and,
Oh,
you know, I'm just blown away by your knowledge and your on the ground experience and what you brought to the table.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah. I'm really happy we can finally share some preliminary results. I know you guys have been waiting a
Keep
minute.
those arrows green. Why do you keep?
Exactly.
Why you're dating, keep showing green arrows.
It's good when it's a good outcome.
Yeah, make them fatter.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Barb. We appreciate that.
Thank
very
you.
much. Yeah. I'd like to share one other issue. During the summer, it might have even been back in the spring, there was an issue about a proposed mariculture lease expansion area in the tide flats immediately east of the Ghost Hole. And it was an area while we were in the debate about the Ghost Hole, and there's just kind of one more thing on the table there. And then I've learned since then in late summer that Pacific Seafood withdrew that application. Yes, so.
That's good.
Yeah, we'll pull that off the table after hearing that.
I had a non-plan thing to tell you guys about. Tony DeAndrea is actually going to be giving an Eelgrass talk on February 22nd, next door over at ODFW in the evening.
We are in ODFW.
I'm sorry, ODF, next door. Next door, yeah. And it's something that you should register for, because seats are limited. If you go to TEP's, Tillamook Estuary Partnerships Facebook page, it gives you the link to register for it. You can just, it's free to register. We're just trying to, make sure we've got a proper head count and the right number of seats and, you know, limited space.
what date again?
It's February 22nd. That's that Wednesday. And I don't know if you can you guys get on Facebook and pull up TEP's Facebook page so they can see it. It's meant to be an educational talk. It's not meant to go in and yell about eelgrass. But it's certainly something that if you or anybody else you know is interested to learn about eelgrass, then he'll probably talk a little bit about Seacorp. But that's something we asked him to do for just general information for the folks that live around here.
You, have a approximate time.
I do, yeah, let me just double check.
We're done there. I have one more question for you.
It
Yeah.
will be at 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. Mhm.
Great thing.
Steve's got a question for me, but while you're talking about eelgrass, can I just share a little bit more information? So right now, there are two projects going forward. One is to develop an ecosystem model for the importance and dynamics of eelgrass in Oregon bays and estuaries. That's being undertaken by Oregon State University and University of Washington for the modeler side. But anyways, we should be in the spot next summer to have some nice information there that will add to our knowledge base. There's also another project that's being headed up by Oregon State University folks to develop best management practices for decreasing impacts to eelgrass by commercial mariculture operators. So that's happening as well. And then this new group, the Oregon Ocean Science Trust, was given $1 million in the last legislative session. Part of those dollars are going out into competitive projects. And one of those is to map the eelgrass in the state. So the decision hasn't been made yet, but that's a pending proposal. Another proposal under their consideration is to develop good estimates of the metabolism, the growth and decay of eelgrass, how that works in our bays and estuaries, and how it might contribute to changes in the biochemistry of water, to deal with the ocean acidification issue, and how much scope we might expect. So there's a bunch of work going on for that. I know those last couple of projects, I'm not sure if they're going to be selected, but I know they're under consideration.
Excellent.
A bunch of stuff going on. I guess, Steve, you have another question?
But I think you've given us some detail on this before, but my simple mind forgets things anymore. But you said here earlier today that at the end of June, some of the staff that's associated with these sampling projects is going away
Yes.
because the funding that they were under has discontinued.
Can you pull up the?
is that, is that, help me understand
Yeah.
that situation just a little bit more,
Yeah.
because it's exactly ass backwards from what we should be doing. And I just want to be sure, we look for recommendations. Well, I can think of one right off the bat. Could
Yeah.
maybe go with it, but help me understand that.
So our seeker team in normal years, internally funded within ODFW, consists of Tony and one crew leader and two helpers. That's the whole seeker team. And with this group, the Oregon Ocean Science Trust, a year and a half ago, we were able to secure $400,000 special allotment for them. to come up here.
Trust.
Oregon Ocean Science Trust, that's administered by the Oregon Department of State Lands. Okay, and we were able to wrangle an extra $400,000 out of them, dedicated to seeker, dedicated to Tillamook types. So for the work here, really, good emphasis from this committee to help us get the muscle behind that. We were able to add another crew leader and two other helpers to that team. So we didn't quite double the size of seeker, but we increased its work substantially. In essence, we had two teams with Tony as the lead for those two teams, and that's where Summer came from. We were able to hire her out of Washington and give her two other workers to constitute that second team. But that money runs out.
So that grant is.
That grant comes to an end, yes. So here in the middle, in that backward mode, right in the middle when we're completing everything, that money expires.
I mean, you were fortunate to get.
We were fortunate to have it, and we capitalized on it last year and
So-
first part of it.
How much money is generated from the shellfish recreational licenses?
Yeah, we were just talking about that on the way up here. It's hard for us to figure that out. Generally, ODFW sells about 200,000 of the recreational licenses per year. And we get, it's better than I too, we don't get all of that. Some of that goes to Oregon State Police for enforcement action. Generally, it's about 20% of that. About 30% goes to the Oregon Department of Agriculture to monitor the biotoxin issue.
Right, we don't, people dying when they eat the plant.
Exactly.
Is paid to harvest.
And then ODFW gets about 50% of that. And that funds the bulk of the seeker program is 100% funded out of that, all recreational dollars, and other aspects of our salaries. And it can be maybe 30% or so of the rest of the shellfish program. And that varies from year to year in terms of how much.
So if we recommended that we increase that by $2, with that being totally dedicated to seeker, that would cover it.
That would be, that would certainly help from our perspective, although it's very difficult to get a fee increase. There's an external budget committee that runs ODFW's request to the governor. They chart out when they feel comfortable asking for the fee. We can make recommendations. Yeah.
To that effect.
Yeah,
That's, I mean, you obviously, you wouldn't get it done in this session.
No.
You have to
This is
lay the
like-
groundwork, but
Yeah.
we could make a recommendation to that effect.
sure.
And, one of the things
Or we could
that
even do $3 and keep the split the same.
I remember, I went through, we took a run at the shellfish license 6 times in a row before we got it. We got it on the 6th attempt. Mostly
That's
because.
something, if you give us that information, we can make a recommendation to repeat that dedicated funding. And here are possible avenues of funding it, and if that doesn't work, then, then we can compel, but that's obviously the best opportunity, or the best option is to have you guys just keep getting the funding to do it,
Right, and I mean, if you say, how much is it?
The license,
Yeah,
$10.
so I get a $10 license and I go out and get 6 crab at one time. I mean, come on,
It's fish and chips, no.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, if we raised it
I'll
to.
take your crab and get you a few more than that. Let's go grab and get you a few more.
Hey, listen, I'm a pioneer now, and they said I could have it for free. So, but I'm just saying, I still paid for it, but.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Move it to
I
12
mean,
bucks.
that, I think that's, if we're talking about recommendations that we as a group made,
Yeah.
they aren't on our list here. But per se, I think that certainly is one that we ought to consider, is to at least try to replace that funding. At least that grant level, which gives you, because you're gonna have other bays that you've got to
Sure.
address.
Yeah.
And it would be really effective not to have to wait multiple years to get it done because your crew's so small, you can't get all that work done that we saw, so.
Right.
That would seem to be a reasonable, the only other thing that I would ask, and it's probably not something you guys can do anything about, but that percentage that goes to Department of Ag is getting bigger all the time. It was frustrating to me when we first got the shellfish license, how much of it went to Department of Ag. And it's, this is me arguing, you know, my own personal beliefs, but it's too high. Department of Ag has a responsibility to manage those, you know, the pieces that they're responsible for. The commercial industry, I'm not arguing anybody here, but the commercial industry has a responsibility to help pay for that. And largely, a big chunk of the shellfish from recreational fishermen is paying for a bunch of stuff that isn't recreationally related. The biotoxin piece is, I get that, but there's a lot of other things there that are not recreationally related. And that was the piece we had to give to get the license in the first place, I understand, but it's been getting bigger. The percentage keeps getting bigger, as all government does. And it's something that we need to take a look at, slow down a little bit, or at least be sure. Because I don't want to come here one day and find out that 70% of it goes to the Department of Ag. And while I'm out here trying to, you know, Barbara and I are trying to catch a crab or a trout or whatever, you know, a clam of some kind. I mean, that's.
I'm gonna get you salmon, so let's get the salmon.
That's another meeting. That's a different meeting. But anyway, it's just something that I would hope that the department is watching that from a politics standpoint, because if it gets much bigger, it's pretty hard to argue. You're 50% of it's going somewhere else. It's getting harder to argue that you're supporting me as the guy who's paying the bill, frankly.
Well, that's why I'm saying if we recommend an increase, but it go 100% towards C-Corp,
Sure.
you know, not the split.
Sure, and that's a reasonable recommendation. Now, the pulling that off is tough, the sharks just come running out of the room and see much. You know.
Well, I don't think $2 is gonna make much difference to
I agree.
the 200,000 people that wanna go crabbing
I
one day.
agree.
And come home with $200 worth of crab, you know?
Where you'll be able to help Barbara, if that were to move forward, is to figure out here on the coast, how, you know, when we asked for $6 when we first did it, the argument up and down the coast was people will quit crabbing, they won't come to the coast, they won't go clamming.
Well,
And I
okay, so-
remember thinking, wait a minute,
But
for $6?
No, wait a
Come
minute
on.
though, but even so, if when you started it,
Yeah,
what was the price of a crab?
well, I don't know.
You know, now it's like $30 if it's
Well,
on
sure.
sale.
But $6, even then, $6, if I'm going to the coast, $6, I can't buy a beer hardly anymore for $6.
Right, so I'm saying, you know, times have changed and the price to, even the crab bait, the clams for
Sure.
crab bait is more than doubled in value, you know, so.
Well, the coastal communities and folks in them who are supportive of any kind of increase will have to be pretty participatory to kind of negate some of that conversation, which maybe somebody at Nehalem says, nobody will come to Nehalem anymore, the boathouse, and I'm just, you know, if somebody says it isn't gonna happen because it's cost too much.
But yeah, I don't buy that.
Yeah, I don't either.
If we can make a recommendation for an increase of a couple bucks,
Mhm.
and then specifically say, well, I'm all for it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, definitely.
Well, that is actually one of the options on this very first page.
Oh,
It's
okay.
providing additional funding, you know, we just have to fill in how, what would that take and what are some options? Are we all good? It's 3:00,
I think we're good. Good.
Nicely done,
Excellent.
Sherman.
excellent
Yeah.
meeting, yay.
Very nice meeting, and as we anticipate, I think having the opportunity to meet face to face helps a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Makes it a lot better.
And if I think I'm coming, I'll make cookies.
Let the minutes reflect.